Welcome back to 8 Cubes. I'm KMBest. He's Lamby series. We're both wearing glasses today. Difficult to tell us apart, I know. Now, we are going to start with, as always, the first of the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, which is the card coming out next week, Archangel, Horseman of Death. Archangel, Horseman of Death will drop on Tuesday, a 2/3 that has an objective ability that triggers once you've destroyed 4 cards. The effect of that ability is to revive one of the cards you've destroyed with +4 power. So baseline, you look at this and you're like, okay, that's a 2/7. At least it's not that bad. The thing that is interesting about this is that the targeting is random, but controllable in the context of cards you're going to actually be destroying. What I mean by that is a lot of the cards you typically want to destroy and buff with plus power are cards that actually don't work with Archangel the way you want them to. Cards like Deadpool or Wolverine are not actually going to be in the graveyard to be revived. But that also gives you more control over what you actually want to target. Let's say you destroy a Wolverine 3 times and something else once. Well, that something else is going to be what you get back out of Archangel. So to me, rather than just being, 2/7 stat sticky guy, I think that this card is a combo card that wants to have some kind of specific revive target, kind of like Elixir almost. And that's the space that really sticks out to me as to, is this card going to actually get me to do anything different? The question will be, how easy is it to get to those 4 boom booms? And is this going to be better than Elixir in a fire hair list, not just a traditional destroy list?
Yeah, so the thing about this card for me is that firstly the card is a 2-drop, so that's fine. But the second the issue with the card is that firstly, like you said, right, the resurrection is okay, not the issue with the card, but like you have to destroy things 4 times, and then like you can sort of curate what is like respawn, because things that respawn actually have to be dead, right? So, but the problem with that is a lot of the stuff that you like to buff, right, like Deadpool, Wolverines, all that kind of stuff like that, they don't count, they don't actually die, they actually just like come back by themselves. So you can't revive those cards and give those cards that scale +4. So it's gonna be really interesting to see like if there's a very intentional target that actually truly dies, and then you bring that back with this one, and then you get a deck out of this whole thing. But that target has to be very like intentional. Like it has to be like a very like premium target, because just bringing a random guy back and going +4 is not, it's not good enough in the current meta, right? We clearly know this. It has to be like a +4 that compounds, that can actually die. So that's actually a very small group of cards that are like that.
From a design perspective, do you consider it a bit of a miss that this card doesn't work with a lot of the stuff that you'd want to destroy a lot of the time?
Yes.
Like, it
Yeah.
just sort of strikes me as a very odd decision because those cards, I mean, maybe I'll be surprised and that'll work that way, but no other card that revives has been able to target those cards because they're
Yep.
not actually dead. And Destroy being a deck that is chock full of those cards. Wolverine, X-23, Deadpool, it's all about those mutant healing factors. That's actually sort of the thematic link Destroy has, is mutant healing factors and symbiotes. That's
I just
kind of what the
realized it's
deck is.
actually,
Hmm?
yeah, I just kind of realized that Wolverine and Deadpool reviving themselves is like part of their ability,
Yeah.
like the human symbiote. I never thought of it that way, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like half the deck is mutant healing factors and half the deck is symbiotes, and it's like that's part of why I always liked it as like a sort of thematic
Oh,
offering because
took
it
me three
kind
years,
of
guys.
works from a lore perspective at least. And so you have this like very interesting deck, and you have a card that like in theory seems like the kind of thing that when it comes out, the first thing you think is like, I would love to put 4 power on a Deadpool. And it just can't do that. And so it just strikes me as a card that like misses some core piece of what its own appeal is supposed to be. Next up is Stryfe. 4/6 objective, play 3 on reveals, result, copy the highest cost on reveal in your hand. This guy's been a bit of a Fin Fang Foom bot, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, Fin Fang Foom is the kind of on reveal that is uniquely powerful in putting power on the board. There aren't very many on reveals that are going to put power on the board in a way that doesn't take up space or works with what you're doing. And Fin Fang Foom, of course, is a 7 cost, which makes it very likely to be the target that Stryfe is going to actually hit, which is generally good both for targeting and for output, really hitting a specific niche here. But this guy is, I won't say he's bad, but there is a world where it's like, I like what he does with Fin Fang Foom. I like what he does with Aurora. I don't really play him anywhere else. And that is a kind of interesting dynamic for a card like this to have, because I think people look at a card like this and they see, look at all the incredible things I can do with this card. Look at all the amazing things I'll be able to do with this card. But there's actually only like 2 or 3. There's only a few amazing things you're going to be able to do with this card. And I think it's notable that a card like this that is so tied to its high-end output, if you don't have Fin Fang Foom or Aurora, or if you don't necessarily enjoy playing those kinds of cards, I think people look at cards in a vacuum and like, wow, Stryfe is so good when you Foom it. It must be good when you do other stuff too. And it's like, not really. Like, it's really not on that level. It's fine, but it goes from being fine to being a card you actually see because of Fin Fang Foom mostly.
Yeah, I mean, I had high hopes for this card last week when I was talking about it, because, like you said, right, the Fin Fang Fu interaction is like we were talking about like the second copy of a boss monster kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really appealing and really strong. But I think at the end of the day, it's still, I think the biggest issue is also you need that piece at the right time in your hand, and then you also need to be able to play this. You need to have basically the Fin Fang Fu in your hand, right? So like it's there's a fail rate. There's a fail rate to it, and then like the secondary copy options might not be that good, you know. Like for example, let's just say you miss on the Fin Fang Foom, right? What's your secondary copy option? It's significantly worse, right? In most of these decks. So I would say that that's one of the failing factors of this deck. Also, if this effect doesn't go off a 4/6, it's not good enough in the current metagame, obviously.
I mean, the other thing is that, like, a lot of the time you're triggering him either really early or really late on a Fin Fang
Correct.
Foom. And, like, an early triggered Fin Fang Foom is, like, I don't know, 6
Not
power.
fantastic.
It's not great. Like, you're definitely sitting there like, all right, I mean, okay, it's fine. I got like an okay guy out of this. But the thing that he adds to the deck is an end of game trigger effectively. So, like, you can avoid priority stuff on the final turn of the game if you say Zola this guy with a Fin Fang Foom trigger in it. Oh, the Zola interaction also worth talking about. There's a couple bits of weirdness, but this is a card that I expect is working correctly. He doesn't have an on reveal, so you can't like Grandmaster him or,
Mm,
absorbing man him, even if he uses the on reveal. But if you Zola him, it creates a new copy on which the ability has not been used. So it'll
right.
keep the points it got from its first ability, and then it will recognize that its conditions have been met for the objective, trigger the objective again. Presumably, Fin Fang is still in your hand, and hit a second Fin Fang Foom. And that is a lot of what actually makes this card functional. Like, one of the things that's really struck me about this card is how bad just a normal Fin Fang Foom is, but how good multiple Fin Fang Fooms are. You know what I mean? Like, just
Yeah.
one Fin Fang Foom, you might as well be a ramp deck. That's fine. We can beat that. I could beat one Fin Fang Foom, but 2 Fin Fang Fooms, or even 3 Fin Fang Fooms. It's the multiplicative nature of this. Like, the fact that so much of his power comes from an on reveal allows him to pair with these multiplicative cards. That's a big part of what has made Stryfe and Fin Fang such a good pairing. Next up is Wolverine. Wolverine is a 4/3 objective. When it hits 5 power, it gives +3 power to each a unit at each location. I consider this card a repudiation of all the people who constantly say stuff like they can never put +3 on a card, despite all the times they've done that and it being so terrible. Like, it's very clear that Marvel Snap cards are an interplay of input and output, and putting +3 on a card is as simple as gating it behind enough of a requirement. The problem with Show Allow is not that it says +3, but that its requirement doesn't have enough knobs on it that they can meaningfully tune up that requirement. The requirement would have to get drastically increased or nothing, and that is the problem with Show Allow, not necessarily that it says +3. Wolverine, on the other hand, has a million knobs on his requirement.
Yep.
a million different things they could do to make him better and worse. They could increase the number that he needs to get buffed by, or decrease the number that he needs to get buffed by, or increase the output of what happens when he does get buffed, or decrease the output of what happens when he does get buffed, or change his base power because he cares about that as well. And I think that one of those things is probably going to happen because this card is not particularly good, despite having the legendary +3 number on it. It just isn't all that good. And the biggest reason why is it's almost miscast as a 4, where this is a card that, like, as a 4, being a 4/12 that doesn't scale multiplicatively or doesn't always scale multiplicatively is not something that it wants to be. What this card wants to be is a card that can be more of a conduit for buffs, but as is, since you have to use a full buff on him a lot of the time, he's not exactly the greatest card in terms of output. It's difficult to make him a 3 cost, I think, because otherwise he's just a surfer card, but
Yep.
maybe you could do something like putting him at 2 cost, or maybe you could just increase his base power at 4. Either way, I think this card has largely been a miss, and they have been, for however many Wolverines they've made, basically, at this point. I think that there is stuff they could do here, but the biggest thing that this card, I think, should teach you is that +3 is not some magical piece of text that automatically makes a card good. It's the interplay of output and input. And Wolverine is asking too much for what he's giving you, even though he's giving you those things in increments of 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to add on this one because, like you said, I do agree it's a bit of a miss. But I just want to highlight that, like you said, right, the whole +3 is like a dangerous thing to go for. Is right and wrong at the same time, right? It's right only when the +3 is easily achievable or easily accessible, like +3s on cards. This one is difficult to achieve, and also once achieved, isn't that fantastic, So I think the amount of like gates that this card has to like go through to actually be a successful like +3 style card is too many right now. And then that's what happens. That's what makes it like not so great of a card essentially.
Techno-organic virus feels like a card that is the kind of card that people just absolutely love despite it not being very good. TOV replaces the effects of, or the text of, all the units at the location you play the TOV with ongoing +1 power for each TOV you've played. And that is cool. That part of it is like the best part of it. The part that I think trips people up is the part where it gives you a second copy of itself, because this is telling you now, build around me. I'm going to give you another copy of myself. What you're going to do is you're going to play a bunch of TOVs this game. And every time I've played against a deck that's playing a bunch of TOVs this game, I've sat there, I've looked at them, and I've been like, whatever I'm doing is better points than this. So you just, like, it's almost like the card. I have a theory about this card. I think this card would have a higher win rate, were you able to look at statistics for this game, if it didn't give you a second copy of itself. I think that if people were just
Okay.
playing this card as like, it's Sauron
Blank.
2, it's
Yeah,
Zero
I get it.
2, if you were just doing that, then this card would be better, because people are torturing their decks in order to get them to fit into a mold for a deck that doesn't really exist. And if it did exist, wouldn't want to exist right now, because this card is such a linear scaling card, right? You're linearly scaling your, I've got 1s and then I'm going to get +2s. Let's go. That's such good value. And it's just not really what the metagame is about. The metagame doesn't care about you
Yeah.
getting good value right now. So there are worlds where that could be a thing that you're trying to do, but trying to do it right now sort of is a mismatch of incentives, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably like some like amount of like math, or like there's a graph that can show you like how much your energy mana you're wasting or whatever if you play the second or third copy or whatsoever. But to be honest, I think I got this quite right last week, right? I like the fact that I said that this was good, like to blank out your stuff as like a cheap version to like blank out negative effects, right? For one cost, that's great and all. But like I did mention also that like the second and third copy is gonna cost you so much in a like non-Mobius shell that it's like just gonna be wasting your turns where you can actually just play other cards that add stats instead of playing this, like play actual cards instead of playing like a second, third, or fourth copy of this one. So I mean, I did also think that like maybe if this was a Mobius world, this could function, but clearly it's not, you know. But yeah, I like the card as just a blank out negative effects thing, like you said, budget Sauron, or maybe it might sometimes be better Sauron depending on the situation. But like yeah, other than that, I feel like being able, it's quite difficult to like play the second and third copy of this card without feeling like, oh, I'm just like wasting energy on like not a very great effect.
And even if you are Mobiusing it, you're doing it in the context where like it's the second thing you want to do with your Mobius, and the first is
Yes.
Pixie, right? And so it's like I like that it overlaps with the incentives for Pixie, right? You want to run a lot of one drops. This wants a lot of one drops, so it has as many targets as it can get. Pixie wants a lot of one drops, so it can flip their costs. Both of you want to be playing Mobius. All of that makes sense to me, but you're relying on those decks being good. And the more you build for this specifically, the more it's like, I mean, that's fine, but it's sort of hard capped at tier 2 because of the output. Ascani Sun in the Deadpool's Diner, pretty good, honestly. I've been pretty impressed with this card. 2/3 activate, where when you activate it, it creates a 1-cost card, but for each turn that you're winning the location Ascani Sun is at, that cost gets higher and higher and higher. So very often this will make a 4 or a 5. I mean, I think this is a fairly limited card. It's pretty clearly to me worse Iron Patriot, but that's a very reasonable thing to be because there's really not anything else in the prio pushing 2-drop archetype, right? Like, I've been playing this card pretty exclusively in Supergiant. I've really loved doing Supergiant stuff with Ascani Sun as my backup Iron Patriot. He's great at that, right? It's just been really solid. And while I think that that is a lot more about Supergiant herself, and we'll talk about her in a couple of topics, but this card is a really legitimate addition to a deck that needed a second Iron Patriot, right? Like, if you're playing Iron Patriot Viv Vision, I think this card is right in between those cards. Just by virtue of being 2, I think it's a better card than Viv Vision. Just because of that, just because it's much more easy to follow up cleanly with a really big 3, I think it's a better card than Viv Vision in those decks. So, is it meaningful that it's like slightly worse Iron Patriot? I think yeah, but only in the context of those decks. And so this is like a, really good role player in that archetype to me. Like, it's not always going to be part of Supergiant because Supergiant has to change to fit metagames too. Sometimes you'll have to play a more scalar heavy version of Supergiant or whatever. But if you're doing this heavy push prio version with just really big bodies in it, I think he's probably going to be in a decent amount of those going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Patriot, Iron Patriot, we know is just a good card, right? And like in these kind of decks that need a little bit more, like just a bit more value, I feel like Ascani Sun can just be like, it's just fine. Like it's fine to be second tier Iron Patriot in this style of decks. But I do think that this doesn't really go in many other places for what it's worth. It's just a okay card in this deck. I guess when it supports an archetype like decently well, you can say that it's like not necessarily a miss of a card, right? Because like it does a good job in the deck that it does a good job in, but in anywhere else, it's not completely splashable. So I guess fair card, nothing too crazy, just a playable card, I guess.
Hatch wishes. I mean, I'll say the obvious one. I'd like them to tune down Sholau a little bit. I think
Again.
I don't know. I don't know how. The real question I have for you on this one is like Star-Lord is still around and still good, but part of me thinks that that's not because Star-Lord is good, and it's more because there just isn't another combo deck in the space. Like, what Star-Lord has over other combo decks is that it's not an on-board combo deck, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot harder to disrupt it on board. You need like a lot more specific things to happen in a game, whereas like Invisible Woman First Step's pretty easy to disrupt on board. You just put a Cosmic Ghost Rider in your deck. It's easy to do. There's really no nuance to it. You just do that at any point on the final 2 turns of the game, right? Like, what works for Star-Lord is that it's kind of the remaining from hand combo deck, where when you look at other combo decks, they're either like magic decks, or they are going to be very interactable with like a CGR or something. And a lot of decks can free roll the interaction for those kind of things, where it's a lot harder to free roll the interaction for a Star-Lord. And so as much as I'd like to say, like, wow, it sucks they nerfed Star-Lord and he's still good, part of me is like, well, A, that's probably what they're supposed to do. Like, that's probably a good thing that they nerfed this card and he's still playable. But also, like, Can we buff something else into that range? Like, it just feels like the reason this deck keeps succeeding is because there's no other combo decks that are allowed to be in the space anymore. And
True.
it's like, I would like if, like, I don't think this deck is good. I think it's way worse than it used to be. But nothing else is scratching that itch right now.
I think okay, so I think this is quite important to take note of as well, whereby yes, yes, Starlord is like way worse than it used to be, right? But we still see it as the premier combo deck because of what you said, which is it's a hard to interact with combo deck,
Yep.
right? Like it's not face up on the board. So if you just compare like the space of combo decks and like what good combo decks should be, right? It's like consistency and the difficulty of your opponent to interact with you, which is what Starlord is. So I think at the end of the day, this is the style of like combo decks that can be like high tier, right? Uh, Easy to combo off plus hard to interact with. So I think they got that one right. But by getting that right, then how else are they gonna print other combo decks that
Yep.
could be in the same space, right? So that's a bit difficult. When it comes to Xiao Lao personally, I talked about it before. Like you try to beat Xiao Lao by beating their setup, right? You don't beat the actual like boss monster that drops because you can't most of the time. But like if that's the case, then you can't nerf Xiao Lao anymore because beating it involves beating the front part of it, which is not the card, right? So how do you nerf a card where the idea of beating it is meant to be beating the other stuff in the deck, not the card itself?
I think you ignore that and just take a bunch of power off of it.
Again,
That would be how I would approach
I
it.
mean that was what I was trying to avoid. That was what I was trying to avoid saying like just remove power again, remove power again,
Yeah,
just
just
make
make
it
it a
remove it
5/4.
to the point that it's a 0. But like I was trying to avoid that.
I wanted to talk a little bit about control because I think that control as an archetype in Marvel Snap is often misunderstood, but Supergiant is a control package fused into a mid-range deck. And I think that dynamic is worth talking about because a lot of decks that are not going multiplicative are just never going to be able to exist if they don't avail themselves of the most powerful control tools in the format. And the reason those cards are the most powerful control tools in the format is because Supergiant Negasonic Cosmo means that everything going multiplicative, you can stop almost all of it. Okay, I'm going to play a Supergiant on 4. Your Star-Lord combo thing, it just doesn't happen now. Done. You're done. There's no multiplicative gaming happening anymore. It is not happening. I am going to play a Cosmo. The thing you were multiplying doesn't happen. Okay, you put a show allow face down on turn 5. Guess what's getting Cosmoed? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Being good at dealing with decks that are working from hand like that. Those are the cards that allow you to do that. Those are the cards that are meaningfully able to pull the pin out of a house of cards that the combo decks are building right now. And it's not a coincidence that like the package around those cards is constantly changing. The package around Supergiant Negasonic Cosmo, it's Ronin, it's the rock stuff, it's Drax Avatar of Life. It's a million different things because what actually matters is those 3 cards. Whatever you are not doing something multiplicative, you should probably be doing something like this. And that is the last pure vestige of a control deck that we have in Marvel Snap.
Yeah, control in Marvel Snap is interesting and it's something that we rarely talk about, right? You on this channel we talk a lot about mid-range shells, we talk about combo. But essentially what control is it's not really just super giant. Like I want to highlight something else after this, which is control in general in card games is basically starving your opponent of resources slash making them play in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Because you want them to play in the direction that you want them to play. So if you think about control decks in Marvel Snap, as much as there's like not a lot, Clock is technically a control deck if you look at it this way, because you are making your opponent play a game that is what you want them to play, right? Because you're making them only able to play cards in this spot, you're making them like unable to play cards in this location at all. So there's kind of like a control deck. It's like a different kind of control from like Supergiant, obviously, but like I guess we want to talk about control and limiting opponents' options and making them do what you want them to do. It's like Clock and Supergiant have like similar effects.
So with that in mind, I want to talk about the sort of relative prominence of a deck like Doom 2099, who I think a lot of good players have a negative opinion of, and I am not one of those players. I think that there's a lot of value in just being the deck that asks the most questions of people, right?
Mm.
I am going to have a consistent amount of output. I'm going to do something strong. I'm going to make you react to me. And a lot of the time, if you're a good enough player, you set up your show lao, you spend the entire game planning around winning 2 lanes, you'll be able to beat my Doom 2099 output. But if you're not
Mhm.
necessarily thinking in that way the entire game, or if something just doesn't come together for you, I am going to put the onus of having to do something this game on you. You are going to be the one that has to do things in this game. You're going to have to think about things. You're going to have to be the one planning around me. My game plan, it's just happening. It's across all 3 lanes. You have to read and react to that. You're the one who has to be the good player here, not me. And I think that, like, for that reason, a lot of good players see the matchup as kind of free. They're like, oh, you're asking me to be the thing that I am. I'm going to be able to do that. I'm fine. I love this matchup. I'm very in control. I have everything here. In a game with snaps in it, how does this dynamic change? Because I think that's the big thing that changes from a non-snap card game to a snap card game,
Mhm.
that it is much more valuable to be the question asker when your opponent can't rob you of 8 cubes for having the answer. You know what I mean?
So, okay, this is a very cool topic for me personally because I have this personal belief for a lot of card games that I play, and it's usually very true as well, which is that there's decks in games whereby, like you said, the question asker deck and the question answerer. Answer, that's not a word. The one that answers the questions. Like, usually the one that answers the questions is almost always slightly worse than the one that asks the questions, because to be able to answer something, the question has to. No, sorry, to be able to answer something which is the purpose of your deck, the question has first to be asked. So the guy asking the questions is always the one to being proactive, right?
Yep.
And if you somehow cannot answer, you lose. So the one asking the questions has to always be like, it's always the more proactive deck. It's generally like the better one in most cases. Whereas for Doom 29, I feel like, I guess it is all constantly asking questions, but it's like maybe it's asking questions that are a bit too easy to solve, right? It's a bit too little power on every location. Whereas for a deck like Shao Lao is also a deck that asks a lot of questions, right? You just play the curve. Can you answer the end game? If you can't, you lose, right? Shao Lao does it in a better way. So I feel like Doom 29. Okay, Doom 2099 is not a Shao Lao deck, and they are two different decks, but they both do the same thing whereby they are proactive and they ask questions. And then I guess Doom 29's questions are a lot easier to answer.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. He's been Lamby Series, and he's going to take us out.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.